You're listening to The Film File right here on No Barriers Radio, the film show for film geeks by film geeks.
Hello and welcome to The Film File. I'm Andy Meakin and I'm here once again with another show of the film show for film geeks by film geeks, or geek singular at the moment. As regular listeners of the show know, Lee is going through treatment at the moment and so is unable to take part in the show. I did get a chance to see him this week as he came in to join me for a screening of Supergirl. And he's missing talking about film for you guys as much as you guys are missing him talking about film. We look forward to his eventual return to the show. But in the meantime, I've got another selection today of some news roundup that I've caught over the past couple of weeks. I'll also be bringing a couple of new reviews this week. First up will be Supergirl, and then I'll be talking about the latest Jackass entry, Best and Last. And as it's the midpoint of the year, in the slots where we normally have a deep dive, I'll take a look back at the last 6 months and pick out my highlights of a top 5 films from this year. And also, as always, whenever we do these roundups of the years so far, I'll tell you which films failed to impress on any level for me. But we don't like to dwell on negativity here. We like to dwell on positivity. And so let's move on with the show. And let's start, as always, with the part of the show that we lovingly call the news. So let's start the news with the box office roundup for the weekend. Over in the US this weekend, Toy Story 5 remained at the top of the box office, taking 70 million this weekend. Worldwide, it's up to 585 million already. Supergirl in second place, taking 38 million. Obsession in third, 9.8 million. Jackass Best and Last, 8.4 million for fourth. And Disclosure Day rounding out the fifth place with 8.1 million. Here in the UK, Toy Story also at the top of the box office, 9.2 million. Supergirl in second place with 2.7 million. Disclosure Day in third place with 881,000. Jackass Best and Last in fourth place with 781,000. And Obsession rounding out the UK top 5 with 584,000. So Supergirl has not performed at all over its opening weekend. The level of negativity around the film prior to its release certainly can't have helped. And when the first lots of critics' reviews dropped, with it resulting in being around 58-59% overall on Rotten Tomatoes, you know, the websites that most people say you should ignore until it justifies their hatred of something, that can't have helped with your general audience who just see that critics are saying that this film is bad, so maybe it is bad and we won't give it a shot. But as we always say here on the show, a critic's opinion is simply just that. If you were excited about something, never let someone else's opinion put you off seeing it. Go and see it for yourself and make your own mind up. Seeing over this weekend on social media the wave of people who have been going in expecting the worst because of the reviews and coming out going, that wasn't the film that these people were saying it is, and finding themselves enjoying it more than what the reviews would suggest, just simply proves that, you know, give it a shot. But at this point in time, it's looking very unlikely that Supergirl will break even. And it looks like it's just another victim of a very competitive market at the moment, which we've mentioned many times. There's too many films coming out this summer. And so some films will fall by the wayside. And they will be films that should be blockbusters that don't get the blockbuster kind of money. We saw it with He-Man. We're going to see it with Supergirl because Supergirl has landed right between Toy Story and Minions and Monsters, which comes out next week. It's an absolute slaughterfest at the box office this summer. But let's move away from that. Let's take a look at A24. Now, you know that on the show here, we've got a lot of love for A24, particularly myself, who I will seek out anything that A24 do. This week, A24 have come under a lot of scrutiny from the fan base because they've announced a 75 million research partnership with Google DeepMind to explore the use of AI for shaping new tools and workflows. Now, the AI argument online is crazy. If you try to stay in the middle ground and try to argue the pros and cons and the nuances, you kind of get lumped with the pro-AI people, even though you're not necessarily pro-AI. Now, we've not made clear our personal stances on AI on the show, and I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but I see AI used properly as a tool for a person to use. But I do agree that it shouldn't be used for the creative aspects. AI should not be used to write scripts. AI should not be used to get story ideas. AI should not be used to generate scenes and special effects. AI should not be used to replace voice actors. It should never take away someone's job, but it should be just like this computer that is in front of me at the moment and has lots of little trinkets to help me edit the audio. It should be a tool for the user to assist them in doing their job. One example is one recording studio that I'm using at the moment, Riverside. They have a great set of tools for the post-edit thing. Now, I do this whole podcast out of love. I do this on my own basis. I don't get paid for it. I can't afford to pay someone to edit it for me. So having a tool there that helps me edit quicker is a benefit to me. It means that I'm not pressured to rush the job as fast as possible so I can get on with my normal life. I have tools on hand that I sometimes use. I don't always use them. I'll make that clear that most of the time it is manual editing, but it does have some nice inbuilt tools that help on the editing process. Now let's get back to A24. So A24 has stressed that their new agreement is strictly a research collaboration. Well, Sophie Shin, who handles communications at A24, has told Wired this week, our relationship with our audience is something we don't take for granted. This partnership exists because we want to dictate what tools get built for artists, and so they have a voice in shaping them rather than having tools handed to them. We'd rather have a seat at the table than on the sidelines. Truth is, we don't necessarily love any of the current AI outputs on screen in Hollywood. I don't even know if ultimately we'd create tech on that front. This partnership is about learning and helping pain points in workflows behind the scenes more than anything else. The response to that statement so far hasn't been great because, like I said, people get very tribalistic with AI discussions. And so no matter what's being said, unless A24 came out and says, no, we decided we're not touching AI ever again, computers are dead, and start smashing their keyboards in front of them, videoing it for the whole world to see so that they know that they're being honest about this, they're not going to get anyone on their side. The main disappointment from the fan base is that A24 are built up a reputation of being carefully cultivated brand identity built on authenticity and cutting edge in its approach. But this action has been seen as something of a betrayal of that mandate. One thing's for certain, the industry as a whole is exploring potential usage of AI, and A24 are just the latest studio to get embroiled in the hot debate. Meanwhile, sticking with A24 and Netflix have teamed up for a new drama series which will star Stranger Things actors Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour, and will be written and executive produced by Jack Thorne, the creator of Adolescence and Lord of the Flies. The new series is currently untitled, but it will focus on a disgraced FBI agent turned security expert named Matt Wolf, played by Harbour, who's drawn back into the world he left behind when his estranged daughter Rebecca, played by Millie Bobby Brown, now an FBI agent determined to follow in his footsteps, vanishes on a mission, forcing him to return to a field that is evolved beyond him. As Ginny Howe, the Netflix head of scripted series for North America, says, we are delighted to bring this spy drama to life with an extraordinary group of talent we've been fortunate to collaborate with before. Jack Thorne's ability to find the deeply human story inside a thriller is unmatched, and watching Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour reunite, this time as an estranged father and daughter on opposite sides of a crisis, is something the audience is going to love. A24 is the perfect partner to bring this story to our members around the world. So remember Dark Shadows. Now, some of you might remember the show from the 1960s that got reruns throughout the 70s. Gothic cult soap opera. The rest of you will know of the Johnny Depp starring film from just over a decade ago. Well, Warner Brothers Animation has announced that it's bringing Dark Shadows back in a whole new way. The series, which follows the tormented vampire Barnabas Collins and his supernaturally dysfunctional family, is being reimagined as an adult animation series. Dan Curtis had created the original show, which aired weekdays between 1966 and 1971, and it had very nuanced takes on werewolves, zombies, monsters, witches, warlocks, as well as time travel and parallel universe events taking place. The new animated show's logline describes it as blending gothic, horror, and supernatural genres. This coming adaptation promises all the dark twists and romantic intrigue that defined the transformational series across this 1200-plus run. I'm definitely down for an animated series to explore that world in all of its strangeness, kookiness, and weirdness. On the subject of animation, we know that there's another Shrek film on its way, and they've already announced a Shrek film to follow that. Well, Universal Pictures has officially set a June the 30th, 2028 release date for a Shrek spin-off movie. No, it's not another Puss in Boots movie, it's Eddie Murphy's Donkey. Murphy had discussed a few months ago about plans to get Donkey his own movie, which he described as a little story with his dragon wife and his kids that are half dragon and half donkeys. They've written this funny story. Now, it's finally happening, and it's said to be an origin story on how a donkey became the donkey. Further plot details are under wraps. Lego Ninjago movie director Charlie Bean and Puss in Boots Last Wish story artist Matt Flynn are going to co-direct the film, with Rebecca Huntley producing. Do we need an origin story for Donkey? Not really. But did we need an origin story film for Puss in Boots? No. Did we enjoy it? Yes. And did we enjoy the following film, The Last Wish? Oh, hell yes. So, keeping an open mind for this one. The Shrek franchise isn't dead, as Puss in Boots The Last Wish demonstrated, and the excitement is building for the Shrek universe once again, despite some online negativity about the animation looks different. Yes, it will do, because we're in a different era of animation now. Does it still look like Shrek? Yes. What's the problem? Stop being overly critical. Anyway, Shrek 5 is on its way, and it's set to open next year on June 30th. So we've only got one whole year to wait. Looking at the Odyssey. Now, you remember that there's been a lot of discussion about who's cast as who within the Odyssey. And a lot of people online had started making their opinions on some of the casting decisions based on unfounded, unsubstantiated rumours that have been erroneously turned into fact. Yes, I'm talking about the rumour that Elliot Page would be playing the famed warrior Achilles in the underworld set scenes of the movie. Now, with the Odyssey, there's been a lot of secrecy around a lot of details of this film, and just getting the details of who's playing who across the supporting cast has been a bit of a minefield, but it became common knowledge that Achilles was going to be played by Elliot Page, and so began a whole online toxicity campaign against Elliot Page, and being very personal in the way that they attack that actor playing that role. Well, egg on their faces, as a newly published final major cast list has finally ended that silly rumour. The full cast list comes from IGN Hungary, who received the full list of Hungarian voice cast for the film via Universal's non-US distributor, United International Pictures. The list includes the roles, the actor in the film for each, and the corresponding Hungarian voiceover artist for the dubbing for that role. And it's confirmed that Elliot Page will be playing Sinan, a character that's not actually from the Odyssey, but did turn up later in connected stories. Sinan is Odysseus's cousin, and the one who convinces the Trojans to bring the horse into the city by pretending to have been left behind by the Greeks. The cast list has also confirmed a few more of the smaller roles. James Remar is apparently the blind underworld prophet Tiresias. Himesh Patel is Odysseus's incompetent brother-in-law Eurylochus. Logan Marshall Green is Melanthius. Mia Goth is the disloyal Ithacan maidservant Melantho. Corey Hawkins is playing the Egyptian Polybus, and Elise Gebel is a warrior named Elatus. Also listed is Andrew Howard as a politician, Travis Scott as a bard, and Bill Irwin as the voice of the Cyclops. What is interesting as well is the names that aren't on the list that are characters in the original work. Athena appears to be the only one of the Greek gods within this film, despite Poseidon, Zeus, Hermes, and Helios being part of the story. Also missing are notable characters like Cassandra, Aeolus, Nausicaa, and Achilles. It doesn't mean that they won't be in the film, but they're not on the dubbing cast list. Now, The Odyssey, if it was to be adapted properly, would have to be at least 12 hours long. Nolan has managed to make a film that is apparently around 2 hours 50, so obviously some elements were going to get removed. This is not going to be a faithful adaptation of The Odyssey, and you know what? I'm fine with that. I would like to see a faithful adaptation of The Odyssey, just as I'd like to see the Iliad done in all its full detail. But they are so epic in scale that a film would have to be bum-numbingly long in order to do it. As a TV series, they could work beautifully. But I am excited to see some Greek mythology on the big screen from a great director like Nolan. And we only have a few more weeks before that lands on July the 17th. News that came last week that I didn't get a chance to discuss It's coming from DC and Warner Brothers Animation. 3 new animated series that are in the works: Absolute Batman, Joker Laugh Riot, and Crypto. These 3 projects were announced as part of a joint DC Studios and Warner Brothers Animation presentation. Absolute Batman, for those who don't know, is based on the monthly comic book series of the same name that began back in 2024, with the comics creators Scott Snyder and Nick Dragotta being involved in the show's development. The comic series is a reimagining of Batman, has Bruce Wayne being a 24-year-old blue-collar civil engineer who's only lost one parent, operating at night as the vigilante Batman, fighting crime with his self-designed equipment and armor. In this version, Alfred Pennyworth is an MI6 agent stalking him, while enemies like the Riddler, the Penguin, etc. are childhood friends. And the version of the Joker within this is a billionaire. It's an alternate take on Batman that strips away the wealth that Bruce Wayne relies on to create all his tech and gadgets, and just has it being a man in a suit taking people on, which allows them to explore what elements of the Batman character come from the wealth and what are actually coming from the heart. It's a cracking comic series. The absolute run on DC, be it Absolute Superman, Absolute Green Lantern, are all worth checking out for these alternate takes on alternate timelines. I've always been a fan of like what if kind of scenarios. I mean, with Marvel, I collected all the what if comics, which take a look at moments in Marvel history and what if it went a different way and what that would happen. With DC, the Elseworlds alternate histories, such as this, are always worth checking out, but Absolute Batman is peak comic book entertainment, which is what you'd expect from Scott Snyder. With regards to the other 2 animations announced, Joker Laugh Riot will see DC animation veteran Jim Krieg executive producing, and in this series, Batman is murdered and the Joker launches a ruthless crusade through Gotham's underworld to find the killer who took away his greatest adversary and the man who gave his life meaning. And then the Crypto animated series came as no surprise. It was only a matter of time before inevitably we would get a show in one way, shape or form about everyone's favourite good boy. And this animated series will see Crypto tagging along with a gang of misfit criminal wannabes who live nearby, and his pure nature slowly ends up redeeming them. C.H. Greenblatt, who was involved in SpongeBob SquarePants, is going to executive produce that show. Evil Dead Burn is only a matter of weeks away, and we already know that another entry is on the way called Evil Dead Wrath, set to open in April 2028, and that wrapped filming in New Zealand a couple of weeks ago. Robert Tappert, Sam Raimi's longtime producing partner on the franchise, has revealed some new details about the film back in April that nobody actually picked up on at the time. Tappert reportedly made an appearance at the Michigan State University, the same university that Raimi's original Evil Dead characters were students of when they visited the infamous wood cabin. And there's a since-removed video that was on YouTube from that event where Tappert revealed that the upcoming Francis Galuppi-directed film is going to be set in the earliest part of the Evil Dead timeline. Specifically, the action will unfold a decade before anything in the first film. As Tappert said, this is yet another great departure. It predates everything. It takes place in 1972. It's the story of a French woman in a bad marriage in America, and what we will discover along the ride was probably an abusive husband whose family did not believe her. And so they were basically the in-laws from hell. It will feel like a 1972 movie because the director and his DP want to imitate the look and feel of something that's called Ektachrome 100, which is a type of film stock. It's a film stock a lot of movies were shot on back then, and so it's very warm, very tungsten. He then went on to make comparisons with the upcoming Evil Dead Burn, saying that the 2 films will look very different. In his words, 2 entirely different filmmakers. One, for Burn, that shoots on everything on a 110mm lens handheld, always moving, always shaking. The other one, Wrath, is very Tarantino-esque, very deliberate. That one, unlike Burn, has a lot of coming-of-age sexual hijinks in it, and it goes there, I think. Evil Dead Burn hits the cinemas on July the 10th, and Evil Dead Wrath will be arriving April the 7th, 2028. Get ready to be grouchy around Christmas again as Universal Pictures and Imagine Entertainment announced that they are developing a sequel to 2000's live-action How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Yes, the Jim Carrey film is getting a sequel over a quarter of a century after it first wowed audiences. Jim Carrey is in talks to reprise his role as the Grinch, and Ron Howard is set to return to direct, producing alongside his partner Brian Grazer. The script for this has come from Alec Berg, who penned Barry and Silicon Valley, Jeff Schaefer, who penned Dave and episodes of Curb Your Enthusiasm, and David Mandel, who was behind the scenes on Veep and Curb Your Enthusiasm. That trio also worked on the 2003 live-action Cat in the Hat that starred Mike Myers, but let's not hold that against them. Let's give them a chance. It's 2 decades later. They might have learned something by now. The original movie from 2000 has become a consistent hit on streaming every year and is always amongst the top 10 most streamed holiday movies year on year. And it took home the Best Makeup Oscar for Rick Baker's work in a process that took up to 8 hours to apply, which Jim Carrey compared to being buried alive, as he had to endure it 100 times. No doubt a Grinch film would come out at a Christmas, so keep your eyes over the next few years to spread some more misery and joy during the festive season. So we're living in a time when YouTube filmmakers such as Cory Barker and Kane Parsons are topping the box office with Obsession and Backrooms respectively. Well, another viral short filmmaker is setting feature film plans. Kevin Cates' 3-minute viral sci-fi short Open Door, which has generated nearly 15 million views across YouTube, TikTok and Instagram, is going to be adapted into a feature-length film. Kate has teamed with IO screenwriter Charles Spano to write a spec script based on his short and as part of a 6-figure development deal for the project. Budgeting for the film is expected to be finished later this month. Sean Anthony Baker and Mia Matthews are set to reprise their roles from the short, and it follows 2 people on an elevator ride from hell. The film is said to follow the surreal, genre-bending journey of Malcolm Powers. Kate announced in a statement, "I literally can't go a day without someone asking me what our characters saw down there, and I really, really can't wait to show everyone and give some hints along the way. We are ride or die with our original cast and crew who made this happen." We are definitely living in a YouTuber to big screen world at this point in time, and I'm all for it. Couple of bits of quick news to round things off. Got quite excited when I saw news of an upcoming RoboCop TV series. Yes, I know it's never really gone well whenever they've done any reimaginings, reboots, and particularly TV shows of RoboCop. But Conjuring and Aquaman director James Wan is reportedly set to direct key episodes of the upcoming series for Amazon MGM Studio, with Wan also set to executive produce the entire series that will kick off its 6-month shoot next January in Vancouver. Peter Ocko, who was behind Lodge 49 and The Office, writes and showruns the new series, which has been described as a serialized spin on the famed franchise, and Atomic Monster is going to be the label who's producing it. I will never not get excited on RoboCop news. I will generally get disappointed when it finally lands, but I will never not get excited. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 is definitely confirmed, and Gary Dauberman has been set as the writer for the next entry. Comments from actor Skeet Ulrich recently indicated It Follows filmmaker David Robert Mitchell was up for the gig, but that's no longer the case. Emma Tammy is expected to return as director, while game creator Scott Cawthon is producing. Our Flag Means Death creator David Jenkins has confirmed that the script for a pilot for a Booster Gold TV series has been handed in to DC Studios. Jenkins was announced as being set to write the pilot last summer, and would serve as showrunner if it was given a thumbs up for a series order. And Netflix are going to be moving ahead with a sequel to its recent Alan Richardson-led sci-fi action hit, War Machine. The film debuted on Netflix on March the 26th and pulled in 139 million views, making it one of the 10 most popular original films on the streamer. And as we said here on the show, it was a bit of fun. It was a nice throwback to like Predator kind of action films, only with big mecha robots. Patrick Hughes is set to return to direct the sequel and co-write the pick with James Beaufort. And that's it for the news. But over the past couple of weeks, there's also been a sad loss to the industry, as Davy Chase, the actress who is best known for her work in The Ring and Donnie Darko and the original animated Lilo and Stitch, has passed away at the age of 35. Chase's boyfriend, Roy Hernandez, announced the news via TMZ. Chase reportedly passed away following a battle with meningitis. With her breakout role at the age of 10 when she played the young Samantha Darko in Donnie Darko, one of this reviewer's favourite films of all time. The following year, she voiced the character of Lilo in Disney's Lilo and Stitch animated movie, and then maintained that character across 65 episodes of the Lilo and Stitch TV series, as well as the follow-up films Stitch the Movie and Leroy and Stitch. In 2002, she was also the lead role of Chihiro in the English dubbed version of the classic animated Spirited Away. And on that same year, she played the ghostly Samara Morgan in Gore Verbinski's The Ring and scared the living bejesus out of pretty much everyone. Various TV work over the years included a major role in the HBO series Big Love, along with guest spots on shows such as Charmed, CSI, Without a Trace, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and ER. It's a sad loss at the age of 35 to be leaving this world, and our hearts go out to everyone who knew and worked with her. And that, I think that's the news.
You're listening to No Barriers Radio, and you're listening to The Film File, the film show for film geeks by film geeks. And if you're enjoying the show, then check out the Film File podcast, which you can find quite easily by heading over to your favorite podcast platform, searching for The Film File, hitting that subscription button, and leaving a like. More to come on No Barriers Radio, and more to come on The Film File. And you can get in touch with us right here at Film File HQ by simply
heading over to social media platforms, search for Film File UK. You can get in touch with us through there. You can email us, podcast@filmfile.uk. Get in touch with us with any thoughts on films, any films that you want us to deep dive at some point, any films that you disagree with our opinions on. Feel free. We're always open to listen to other sides of the story. And so we come to the part of the show which is normally a deep dive section. But I don't like doing the deep dives without Lee present, because it's our engagement and different perspectives on those films that makes the deep dive work for us. But we are at the midpoint of the year. Yes, we are halfway through 2026 already. And so I thought it'd be an ideal opportunity to take a look at where we currently are and where I currently am with my own watching. Now, at the start of this year, I like to set myself objectives. And my objective this year was at least an average of 2 films per day, be it short film or full-length features. I intended to watch over 720 things this year, and I'm definitely on target. I've logged so far to date, and this is new and old films, so there's a lot of re-watchers from old films or first-time watchers of old films in here. 368 films this year, an average of 61.3 per month, and just under 14.5 films per week. So I'm on target. Out of that full list of 368 films, 74 of them are films that were released this year. 328 of those films are first-time watchers. And apparently, cast-wise, my most watched actor is Don Lake. And that'll be because I had a run of watching various spoofs such as Waiting for Guffman, Mighty Wind, Best in Show for Your Consideration, Mascots. He also popped up in Hot Shots, and I've rewatched Zootopia and Zootopia 2. Charlie Sheen is in second place, again, because I've been watching spoofs. My most watched director this year, again, for the same reason, Christopher Guest, who was behind Mighty Wind, etc., 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 with Danny Boyle in second place with 3 films. I always find it interesting looking through the Letterboxd stats and looking particularly to see the genres and countries and languages that you tend to go for. Now, it turns out that I've watched more comedy films this year than anything else, with 143 films, drama in second place with 102, and action in third place with 84. Obviously, most of my film watching has come from America because it's a huge output over there, 259 of the films, 79 UK productions, with Canada in third place and Germany in fourth with 18. My highest rated genre, though, even though I've watched more comedies, music is the genre that I've loved the most, with an average rating of 3.95 out of 5. The country that I've loved the films from the most is the Netherlands, which have an average of just over 4 stars. And this is reflected with the themes of films and how well are rated. So the top rated theme for films is catchy songs and hilarious musical comedy, or legendary musicians and stardom. And I'm a very emotional person because apparently all of my 5-star films have the nano genre of tearjerker, intellectual, inspiring. And the reason for that is probably because the 5-star films always manage to hit me right in the feels. So which films that have come from this year have I enjoyed the most? Now, it's worth noting that a few of these were releases January, February and March in the UK, even though they'd come out in 2025 in other parts of the world. But I'm including them within my list because I always go by the year they got released in the UK. In no particular order, my top rated films for this year are Project Hail Mary, Marty Supreme, The Secret Agent, The Voice of Hind Rajab, and 28 years later, The Bone Temple. Now, whilst I said in no particular order, one of those 5 films does stand out from the rest, and that is Project Hail Mary. Here's the review from when me and Lee got a chance to see that film on its release. I have since watched it another 2 times.
Oh my God. So, I met an alien. His son is dying too. We have one mission. We're gonna save our planet.
Grace, Rocky, save stars.
Project Hail Mary.
The plot's simple. Former science teacher Ryland Grace, played by Ryan Gosling, wakes up right at the beginning of the film on a spaceship with amnesia, and he's forced to remember why he's on this mission, and then encounters an alien who becomes his friend in order to save the world. I think that's just about as much as we can give away with the plot, don't you think, Andy?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it literally opens with him waking up on the ship, so we're thrust right into the mission itself. They've got to the planets to try to decipher why this one sun in the whole cluster has not been affected by this astrophage virus that is draining sun's energies and causing planets to cool. And it's over the course of the film that it flashes backwards and forwards to fill in the events leading up to him going into space and to learn why he went into space and what the mission was about. I don't want to give any spoilers away because there are some things to spoil in this.
Yeah.
But this is Andy Weir.
Yeah, remember, if you think about it, it's over 10 years since his previous book was adapted by Ridley Scott with a script by Drew Goddard that was compiled from what was originally Weir's self-published science blog, became a big hit. And it was a clever science fiction romp, had Matt Damon as a stranded astronaut, surviving a hostile planet. And there are elements that are very, very similar within this movie. And I think the fact that Goddard is on board and reunited to adapt Weir's third book. And like that, it's a story about a scientist alone in space using his considerable science to, as Matt Damon put it, science the shit out of this mess. But that's about where it ends, and that's about as close a similarity it is. In many ways, this film reminded me, and I think I said this right at the end, it reminded me of Silent Running.
Yeah. While I was watching it, it was throwing my mind to films such as 2001, Silent Running, Interstellar, Close Encounters, amongst many others. This is that kind of high concept sci-fi with a heavy emphasis on the science element that also has a humanity to it. Yes, it's very sciencey. Andy Weir stories are very scientific in approach, but you don't need to understand. And I've seen people this weekend online saying, I didn't understand the science in it, and that let me down. It's like, you don't have to. You're not a scientific engineer. You have to just know that they know the science. And so any use of science references within the film is just to show their knowledge. We are just supposed to accept that they know what they're doing. But this isn't about the saving the planet. That's part of the story. This isn't about the science fiction aspects. This is about one man who's lost his way and lost his belief in himself, discovering what he's capable of when he meets another person who he can't communicate with and has to learn to understand them so they can work together to save everyone. It's about overcoming your own self-inflicted limitations to become something greater than what you are. And it's about friendship across divides. That's the story in here. The interaction between Grace and Rocky. Rocky called that because he looks like a rock creature.
There's more than one reference to Sylvester Stallone's Rocky in this film. And it's Dr. Grace, played by Ryan Gosling, developing this relationship and communicating with Rocky. And because this is Lord and Miller, they are great, not only at the visuals, but with the ability to tell off-the-wall amusing stories. That the heart of this film is that relationship. And it's fantastic because you've got a creature without a face. And again, the same way that Silent Running had the robots who didn't have faces. you're not going to tell me by the end of the film that you buy into the fact that Rocky is a real creature, because it is so well done. Ryan Gosling is basically, for the most of the film, a one-hander. And the thing about Gosling, he's just got effortless charm, and that plays out on the screen. It just makes it so hugely watchable. Even in sort of the more quieter moments, it's his sort of delivery and the way that he has this sort of cheerful, breezy humor that adds to your delight of watching this film. But the film, importantly, is told in flashback sequences, which are a big part of not the mystery of the film, but the understanding, the how and the why of this particular story. And I don't know about you, but the coolly impassive German technocrat, the head of Project Hail Mary, played by Sandra Hüller, I thought was a phenomenal character. And she played it just so well and wonderfully.
I love Sandra Hüller. I think that she's one of the best actresses of her generation, basically. She's absolutely magnificent, and she has to be cold at times, but there's one scene in it that I'm not even going to say what the scene is, because it will spoil the actual revelation of that moment, that she shows what she used to be before she realized that she needs to do anything possible to save the earth. It's just a wonderful film with so much heart and depth, but it also looks amazing. It's been heavily reported that they didn't use green screen. They wanted sets to be as tactile as possible, so they didn't want to have. They wanted it to feel like you could walk around, particularly Grace's ship. They wanted model shots. They wanted old school style of effect shots. There is CGI in there, but it's not for backdrops. It's for elements overlaying, and I think it makes it feel more real and breathable. Even the design of Rocky, which there was animatronics being used and puppetry, and it just gives it a charm.
Yeah.
Even though he's got no face, you feel the personality of Rocky throughout. Yeah. His energy, his almost childlike energy when he's exploring Grace's ship, saying how like, oh, mess in here, messy, oh, mess. Absolutely charming film. So funny. It's old school sci-fi with a modern sensibility to it.
I'm going to say one thing, and it's not a criticism of the film. It's slightly, for me, and I think you disagree with me, that it slightly outstays its welcome on the 2.5 hour mark. And I think in places it could have been tighter. I think it has one ending too many, but that doesn't take away that this is one of the most entertaining space movies I've seen in an awful long time. And to compare it to Silent Running, for me, is the highest of praise. Misquote the characters, this film is quite a medium to big whoop.
Bubbling under my top 5, and only just bubbling under, are films such as Backrooms, Hokum, Obsession, The Drama, Iron Maiden, Burning Ambition, Arco, Exit 8, Ready or Not To. In fact, there's a load of films that I've given strong ratings for this year. It has been a solid year for quality of films, but there have been some stinkers as well. And the bottom 5 this year, anyone who's listened to the show will have heard my reviews of each of these films. Mercy, which, I was begging for when I was watching this. Balls Up, Propeller, Scary Movie, Return to Silent Hill, which was a huge disappointment, being a big fan of Christoph Gans and also a big fan of Silent Hill, Greenland 2, and Roommates isn't too far behind that low end of the scale. Are these really bad films? Well, in my opinion, they were not good, but you might have some enjoyment for them, and that's what it's all about. Feel free to share what your top 5 and bottom 5 so far this year are. But it has been a year of YouTuber success on screen with things like Iron Lung, although I didn't rate that at all. Coming from Markiplier, Obsession from Curry Barker, Backrooms from Kane Parsons, keeping budgets low and seeing wonderful success as a result. With another YouTube-originated project coming to screens next week in the guise of Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie, it's certainly a year which shows that anyone who can have an idea can make a success story out of that in the indie market. It's been a very interesting year overall, and we've still got another 6 months to go through it with a crammed box office towards the back end of the year, but some gems on the horizon that are tantalising me, and I'm looking forward to spending as much time in a air-conditioned cinema screen as I can. And so we come to the new reviews of this week, and let's kick things off with Supergirl.
you?
What was it like to lose everything in a day?
Kurton didn't die in a day. The gods are not that kind. This is not gonna end well. For you guys.
What's Superman like?
He sees the good in everyone. And I see the truth.
Inspired by Tom King's 2021 run on the character Woman of Tomorrow and directed by Craig Gillespie, Supergirl sees Kara Zor-El struggling with the grief and trauma of seeing her family and other survivors of Krypton's destruction dying around her before she was sent to join her cousin on Earth. Her very different experiences growing up have made her a lot more jaded than Clark, and she finds it hard to adjust to Earth life, and so spends her time out in the galaxy on worlds with red suns, where her powers are nullified and she can drink her struggles away. Whilst on one such expedition, she gets caught up in a struggle against a brigand and a trafficking group led by a notorious gangster named Krem, after a young girl named Ruthie approaches her to help her avenge her father's death. Reluctant to help, it's when Crypto is poisoned by Krem that Kara agrees to help hunt the bandits down in order to retrieve an antidote. Over the journey, however, the gruff and solitary Kara will start to find her purpose and heart that was lost after the destruction of her world. Basically, this is True Grit in space, with a story that is less about the hunt for the bad guys and more about exploring the depth of a character who is broken through grief and then finding a reason to be the hero that others think they should be. At the centre of it all is Kara, played marvellously by Millie Alcock throughout. Her broken character, pushing others away at the start, is slowly chipped away, and the potential for good and hope gets revealed over the course of the film. In the moments where she embraces her powers under a yellow sun, that is when we start to see the hero that Clark believes she can be start to come out. Alcock's transformation through the character over the film is great, with her giving it her all in the darker moments, the lighter segments, and the drunken brawls. But sadly, the film is good, but not great. It never comes close to the joy of Superman, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I don't want every one of the DC films to feel the same. But the first act of this film in particular feels a bit flawed. There's no time given to settle into the characters, and for the first half hour or so, it feels very choppy, with moments that seem to have chunks edited out in order to get to the action faster. Once the film gets to the midpoint, however, the pacing does improve as we start to get the emotional beats of Kara's backstory explained before we head to the final act of action and redemption that defines who Supergirl will be going forward, making it clear that this is an origin story to set up the future for the character within the DC franchise. The different worlds that are explored here and the bizarre creatures that inhabit them add some Star Wars-style fun to the events of what, on core story, could have been really dark. And the inclusion of fan favourite Lobo, played by Jason Momoa, who was born to play this role, brings some smiles as his own brand of violent chaos erupts. But Lobo himself is only sporadically used and just pops up from time to time to do his thing before vanishing again, which feels perfectly Lobo to me, as he tends to do that whenever he crosses into other people's comics anyway. It would be great to see more from Lobo in the future, with a solo movie or a series, but in the meantime, his presence here has very little impact on the actual story, but it does land well enough and is enjoyable. Whilst most of the cast are strong, there are two notable exceptions that do stand out. Matthias Schoenaerts as Krem is given little to actually build on, with a very generic bad guy template, and he's sorely unthreatening as a result. Then you have Eve Ridley as Ruthie, who never seems to deliver on the emotional side of her character, simply delivering lines flatly for most of the time. We never really feel her rage and her desire for revenge. We are simply told that it's there. There are moments when she does shine, the cells that she is trapped in at one point, for example, but overall she feels poorly served for a character that is supposed to be key to Kara's own journey. On the flip side, in the scant few moments he pops up, David Corenswet doesn't fail to elicit a smile from you as the joy of the character of Superman blossoms into the darker moments of this film. Overall, this is a fun ride of a film with some great action beats, a solid underlying character-driven tale of redemption and discovery, and it expands out the DCU significantly with glimpses and suggestions of the galactic elements of this universe. Being a Gillespie film, there are a wealth of needle drops. Some think many are erroneously claiming is a James Gunn addition. I mean, have you never seen I, Tonya or Cruella? The drops themselves here are a mixed bag. Some feel a little off to the moment, while some land perfectly and enhance the scene greatly. This is, sadly, to the detriment of a score that doesn't get a chance to define a theme for Kara as Supergirl, but maybe that's deliberately by design. After all, she isn't really Supergirl until she breaks away from the trauma of her past. Supergirl is a dark and fun addition to the DCU that maybe needed a bit more time to pace things out, but when it delivers, boy, it delivers. Now, for those who are missing Lee's opinions on films, Lee's been kind enough to send me across his review of Supergirl as well. So, Supergirl is a really enjoyable, heartfelt superhero movie that brings something to the genre that's been missing lately: optimism. It doesn't quite hit the heights of the very best comic book films, but it's a solid, entertaining watch with plenty to like. The first thing that struck me was how sincere it is. Instead of trying to outdo every other superhero movie with bigger explosions or endless CGI, it focuses on Kara as a person. She's compassionate, stubborn, angry, vulnerable, and determined all at once, which makes her incredibly easy to root for. There's a genuine sense of hope running through the film, and after years of darker, more cynical superhero stories, that's genuinely refreshing. Visually, it's great too. The action scenes are exciting without becoming exhausting. The effects are strong for the most part, and the whole film has a colourful, vibrant look. You can definitely feel James Gunn's influence in the lighter tone and the focus on character rather than just spectacle, and it feels like DC is finally heading in a clearer direction. That said, the film never really surprises you. The story follows a lot of familiar superhero beats, so if you've seen enough comic book movies, you'll probably see most of the twists coming. Some emotional moments land really well, whilst others feel a little rushed. The supporting cast are all likeable enough, but a few could have done with more development, and the villain never quite feels threatening enough to leave a lasting impression. The pacing is a little uneven too. There are some lovely, quieter character scenes that I'd happily have spent more time with, but the film sometimes hurries through important emotional moments just to get to the next action sequence. Because of that, some of the bigger payoffs don't quite hit as hard as they could have. The standout, though, is Millie Alcock. She's phenomenal as Kara. This version of Supergirl is damaged, jaded, and carrying a lot of anger, but underneath it all, there's still hope. That's a really difficult balance to pull off, and Alcock makes it look effortless. She gives Kara real depth, and by the end of the film, she completely owns the role. She's easily the best thing about the movie. Then there's Jason Momoa as Lobo. Honestly, he was born to play this character. Every time he turns up, the film suddenly becomes louder, funnier, and just more fun. He completely steals every scene he's in. My only complaint is that there simply isn't enough of him. Introducing such an entertaining character and then sidelining him for most of the runtime feels like a missed opportunity. It's less a supporting role and more an extended cameo. But even with those flaws, I had a really good time. It's funny when it needs to be, it's emotional without becoming overly sentimental, and it has warmth that's become surprisingly rare in modern blockbusters. It may not reinvent the superhero genre, but it reminds you why these characters have stayed popular for generations. So no, I don't think Supergirl is a great film, but I do think it's a good one. Strong performances, impressive visuals, and a genuinely uplifting message carry it through some familiar storytelling. It's a promising step forward for DC, even if it isn't the instant classic some people were hoping for. So a fun, heartfelt superhero adventure that gets more right than wrong. It doesn't quite soar to the very top tier of comic book movies, but it's comfortably above average and left me genuinely excited to see Millie Alcock's Supergirl again. One thing that has surprised me is how divided the reaction has been. Critics were particularly harsh, whilst audiences have been much more positive, and that's absolutely fair. Films are subjective. But some of the online discourse has crossed a line. Millie Alcock has been on the receiving end of personal attacks about her appearance, which is completely unnecessary. Whether someone likes the film or not is one thing, criticising an actor's looks is another entirely. Alcock has undeniable screen presence and delivers one of the strongest performances in the film, and it's a shame that some conversations have focused on personal insults instead of discussing the movie itself. So, seems like me and Lee are on the same page. So that's Supergirl. If you don't fancy that, why not check out a Jackass Best and Last?
Reminder, the stunts in this movie were performed by professionals.
Hi, I'm Wee Man.
I'm Bam Margera.
I'm Preston Lacey.
I'm Chris Pontius.
So for your safety and the protection of those around you,
I'm Dave England. I'm Danger Aaron. I'm Steve.
I'm Ryan Dunn.
do not attempt any of the stunts you have just seen.
Hello, I'm Johnny Knoxville.
Hello, I'm Johnny Knoxville.
Hello, I'm Johnny Knoxville. Welcome to Jackass. Welcome to the first day of our last film. What are you feeling? I'm sad.
Does it make you sad, Chris?
No, I'm not in touch with my emotions.
I would like to introduce you to our new cast member, Larry!
Nice to meet you all. Big fans.
Oh my gosh, he got you!
Give me a bucket of water so I can throw it on Larry. 25 years and we haven't learned a goddamn thing. Can someone go get the shot collar for your penis? Poopy said he wants to try it.
There's not really much you can say in a review of a Jackass film that would convince people who aren't sure about it to give it a watch. By this point, you're either a fan of the crazy stunts and antics of the gang led by Knoxville, or you've never understood the fascination with grown men injuring themselves or electrocuting each other, or, well, you know the stuff by now. So if you never got Jackass, consider this more of the same and move on. If, like me, you've always gotten some twisted fun, many times behind hands half covering your eyes, from seeing this mob of idiots, then roll up and step into Best and Last. After the previous film, Jackass Forever, Knoxville suggested that would be the final time for the group getting together, as they were maybe getting too old to be doing this stuff. Turns out it was not entirely truthful, and this is something which at one point in this film they jokingly mock him for, as we now have the Best and Last. Or is it? A film which looks back at the history of Jackass via unseen footage and some favourite moments over the run, along with a decent handful of new antics from the guys who never grew up. The gang of Knoxville, Steve-O, Chris Pontius, Jason Kuna, Dave England, Preston Lacey and Erin McGinney are joined by new faces added on the previous film, Poopies, Zach Holmes and Rachel Wolfson, to deliver an hour and a half of mayhem and feces, which includes a robotic prostate exam, an electric collar on a penis, and the escape room from hell that breaks one of the gang, as well as the grossest game of Twister that you will ever witness. To say I was laughing while squirming in my seat frequently in this is an understatement, as these crazy ideas played out on screen, and with the addition of the history of the series being explored and the talking heads moments, if this is indeed their last outing, it's a fitting closure, finally, for the crew. We even get some glimpses of Bam Margera, who was ceremoniously booted from the Jackass franchise during production of the previous film. Here, though, he's only glimpsed in archive footage. One of the highlights of each of the film entries in this franchise has been the overblown intro sequence, such as the first film's giant shopping cart, which is here repeated in the closure of this film. This film opens with possibly my favourite of these intros, as Bonnie Tyler blasts out as the gang navigate a virtual insanity-styled series of rooms with hilarious nods to moments in Jackass history. For this sequence alone, the film is worth seeing, as it is simple hilarity perfected. But, as with all Jackass output, the mix is not all hits. Some stunts or skits don't land well, and occasionally a skit seems to go on a bit too long. But when they are followed swiftly by something that does land, it kind of makes up for anything lacking pretty rapidly. The old footage serves well to bring back the fun, and I will never not laugh at the Wee Man and Friends bar brawl, which we get to see again here. And the whole film gives closure to the show that has run since the early part of this century. Jackass Best and Last is a mixed bag, and it doesn't ever reach the heady heights of Jackass 3D, but for fans of the series, it is definitely a must-see. One last review. Now, I already reviewed this on the show a few weeks ago, but Lee got a chance to see Disclosure Day, and he sent me across his review to share with you all out there. I went into Disclosure Day with a high expectation. It's Spielberg after all, but without knowing what film I was going to see, and honestly, I think that's the best way to experience it. Of course, I watched a trailer. I knew basically the plot, but coming in without that expectation meant every twist and reveal felt fresh. It's one of those films that's much happier letting you discover things yourself rather than spelling everything out. What really surprised me was the atmosphere. It had this wonderfully grounded, distinctly 1970s feel that reminded me somewhat of Spielberg's Sugarland Express, not because the stories are the same, but because of the way it unfolds. It's patient, character-driven, and confident enough to let moments breathe instead of constantly racing towards the next plot point. There's a warmth and authenticity to it that feels increasingly rare in modern cinema. The performances are excellent across the board, with every character feeling believable rather than larger than life. Even when the story starts heading into more unusual territory, the cast keep everything rooted in reality, making it easy to invest emotionally. Visually, It's gorgeous without ever showing off. The cinematography captures that sun-soaked Americana feeling perfectly, and the direction never feels flashy just for the sake of it. Just very Steven Spielberg, and importantly, the film trusts the audience to stay engaged through the characters and the mystery, rather than endless spectacle. What I appreciated most was its confidence. It doesn't feel the need to explain everything immediately, or bombard you with exposition. Instead, it slowly pulls you into its world, rewarding your patience as the bigger picture gradually comes into focus. It's not a film built around massive action scenes or shocking twists every 10 minutes. Instead, it's a thoughtful, engaging story that lingers with you afterwards. If you're willing to go along for the ride and let it unfold at its own pace, there's a lot to enjoy. The fact is that, against so many popular right-wing beliefs, empathy is a superpower. Instead of presenting compassion as something that holds the characters back, this film suggests that it's the very thing that allows people to connect, understand each other, and make better choices. In a story filled with fear, uncertainty, and division, empathy becomes a quiet act of courage. It's a refreshing message, reminding us that listening to and understanding others can be just as powerful as confrontation. Disclosure Day is a confident, beautifully made film with a wonderfully old-school feel. Its 1970s inspired style, strong performances, and patient storytelling make it stand out in a sea of formulaic blockbusters. I had a great time with it, and it's one that I'd happily recommend. So that's what's out at the moment. Next week at cinemas, Minions and Monsters lands. Yeah, I probably won't be watching that. The Invite arrives on a limited run across the UK. Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie. Oh My Goodness, and Taxi Driver celebrates its 50th anniversary. Yes, time to feel old again. On Netflix, Enola Holmes 3 lands this week, and Clean Skin, which sees Sean Bean playing a jaded MI6 agent, taking on a militant group in London, also arrives. And over on Amazon, the prequel to Legally Blonde, miniseries Elle arrives this week. But it's over on Apple TV, where my eyes are focused as Silos Season 3 finally arrives. And that's about it for this week. Before I go, just a very quick neat thing. We brought this show to the neat things multiple times over the years as each season has landed, but this past week, The Bear's final season landed. If you've never jumped on and watched The Bear, now is definitely the time, as all 5 seasons are there, and it is some of the best TV that you will ever get. And season 5 plays out events over the course of one day. And it's a day which perfectly resolves every hanging thread that has been delivered across the run of the series. Seeing how these characters have evolved over the 5 seasons, seeing how they've grown, and in particular, Eben Moss Bacharach's Richie has become the genuine heart of this show. Every one of these characters has had an interesting journey along the way, and this final season has been the perfect icing on a deliciously baked cake that only a Michelin-starred restaurant such as The Bear could deliver. Genuinely one of the best shows of all time. The Bear has come to a beautiful end with a fantastic series that, again, each season always has 1 or 2 episodes that you just sit stressed watching because the drama is so intense. This season does exactly that, and it rounds it all off at the end, and it left me with tears in my eyes. Check out The Bear on Disney+, one of the best shows of all time. That's my neat thing. And so, that's it. Thank you for listening once again. If you want to get in touch, you know what to do. Email us, podcast@filmfile.uk, or drop us a note on social media, Filmfile UK. You can find us on Threads, etc. In the meantime, hope you have a great week. I hope the heat in the UK hasn't been burdening you too much. We have got a week that is apparently going to be a bit more mild, so make the most of it as you can. And I'll see you again next time. And in the meantime, as always, watch more films.